It's week 5 in the NFL, and if you are trying to survive in your survivor pools, you've come to the place that's going to give you the most in-depth analysis on survivor pools. That's Scratching and Surviving from the Sharp app coming up next. All right, guys, congratulations if you're still going in your survivor pools. The Jets, the big one that knocked a lot of people out last week, and that would have been the team for me in Circus. So back-to-back weeks for me, disappointing, which makes it a little bit more palatable having the Bengals 2 weeks ago and getting knocked out of Circa. But speaking of Circa, they're down to, boy, I have to look at it. I think it's 420 people left in Circa or thereabouts. If I got that wrong, I apologize. I just did an article on that, and I'm forgetting it. I know we had about 680 people, and I think we lost 160, 70 people, somewhere in that ballpark last week in Circa. So Circa down to an amazing few amount of people, considering we started with over 14,000 in that pool. For those of you watching who don't necessarily know who I am, I never really introduced myself all that much. I know a lot of you are going to be returning. I see the numbers, and a lot of you are back week in, week out, which I cannot tell you how much we appreciate. And, of course, you guys have subscribed. We've built, I think, 20% of our subscribers have come over the last month or so, and that's really been attributed to these videos and the Survivor videos. So, again, guys, super appreciate that. Just one that's an easy thing to do, but it helps us out tremendously, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate the follows and the likes and the subscribes that you guys are throwing our way. If you want to take like an extra step, you can download the Sharp app. Don't have to buy anything. Don't have to subscribe. Just download the Sharp app for us and have a look at it. We've got the 2.0 version coming out shortly, like kind of a soft launch for that. We're going to have a lot more tools being come out inside the Sharp app over this month, and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be one of the top apps in the industry for sports handicapping. I was starting to mention a little bit about myself. My background is on Wall Street. I was a currency trader, worked in all different aspects, actually, of the FX markets, did some sales, trading, back office, you name it. And then I wound up leaving Wall Street after about 25 years to become a professional DFS player and sports bettor, using some of the analysis tools that I learned from trading and from Wall Street, and incorporated that into my love for sports and sports betting, and then kind of parlay that into starting the Sharp app. So a lot of the tools that I use and have created, you're going to find inside of the Sharp app. So I'm one of the founding partners of the Sharp app, and our goal here is really to make a tool that the professional sports bettor is going to want to use, as well as the amateur sports bettor, someone who's doing this casually, is going to find a lot of utility out of that and increase the chances of them winning, increase their profitability over time. So that's our goal, and I do a lot of these educational videos as well. You're going to find them here on the YouTube channel. A lot of them are 3 or 4 years old, before the app was really as robust as it is now and is going to be in the next few weeks. So I'm going to be redoing a lot of those videos. So if you subscribe and you want to know about sports betting, I'm going to be going over stuff from the basics on what a spread is and what a line is, all the way to some more advanced stuff on how to build your own models, and then everything in between. I think it's going to be something worthwhile for you guys to check out. So by just subscribing here, you should see that pop up in your feed on YouTube. And, of course, those videos are going to be inside of the Sharp app. You can just download it at sharp.app. And if you use code SURVIVOR35, you'll get 35% off if you do decide to get the pro membership, which, of course, helps support us. And really, more than supporting us, we want this to be a value to you and help you in your sports betting, and I think it will do that. So, again, appreciate all that you guys have done for me. Let's dive into this week, though, and see what we've got going on for Survivor. I've got Survivor Grid up, as I usually do, and we could see San Francisco, once again, the largest favorite on the board this week. We talked about this really starting a couple of weeks ago when we were kind of mapping out how we were going to play these next few weeks. Now, if you did not take San Francisco, part of the advice I was giving to you guys was, if you're able to, let's say, take a Kansas City last week, get by with Kansas City, you're going to be on a different schedule, so to speak, as the rest of the pools. or the rest of the participants in your pool, where yes, it's still a decent amount of people are going to be on San Francisco. 16.5% is what's projected right now on Survivor Grid. But as you can see, Seattle's garnering the most attention, and that's not something we may necessarily would have predicted a couple of weeks ago. That's why Survivor pools change. You get injuries. Not that injuries are really causing this one. It's just the fact that Seattle has looked so much better, I think, than maybe a lot of people anticipated. And we may have neighbors out in this game, so we'll keep an eye on that one as well. But back to San Francisco, if you do have them available to you, as always, we'll go to the spreadsheet in a bit and look at future value. But there's a lot of future value, of course, in San Francisco. You can see it just by looking at Survivor Grid. The game at home against Dallas suddenly looks like a better option with Dallas not playing as well. Not necessarily the game that you're going to be jumping at just yet, but that game does look good. At least early on. And if we look at week 8, I think there's a bunch of options in week 8. So, yeah, we've got Detroit, who we really haven't looked to take yet. Miami against Arizona. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be a 6.5-point spread for Miami at home when we get to that point. Certainly not with if Tua is not playing. San Francisco, as we just spoke about. Kansas City at Vegas. Potentially could be an option. Pittsburgh home against the Giants is certainly looking like a better game than it may have just a few weeks ago. So we've got time really to look here. You don't necessarily have to save San Francisco for week 8, but at Tampa again. Tampa, not a terrible team. Maybe not a game that we want to take them. Seattle looking pretty good, even though that's going to be a home game for San Francisco. Maybe not a game that, as we get to week 11, that's going to look as obvious a pick as it may have looked at a few weeks ago. So, not until maybe the Chicago game in week 14. So, again, it's going to matter on the size of the pool that you are in as to whether or not you're looking to save teams. As I always say, we are trying to save teams maybe a little bit more in larger pools because we expect those pools to go maybe the entire 18 weeks, and we're trying to find an optimal path to get them there. It's not necessarily that we're saving the teams and we don't want to take that team because it gives us some sort of advantage. It does give us an advantage if we have an option in the present that we think is going to be a better option than the option that we may have in the future, which makes it obviously difficult. It's hard enough to predict games this weekend, let alone a game 4, 5, 6 weeks out, right? We don't know what the injury situations are going to be. We don't necessarily know right now who the best teams are, even though we have 4 weeks under our belt. So with all that said, in a small pool, if you have not taken San Francisco, you really have to think hard about taking San Francisco in this spot. The other thing is take a look at your opponents. When you guys leave me comments down below, you guys are, for the most part, really, really good about letting me know how many people are left in your pool. And if you're down to like 2 or 3 people, letting me know who you can take and who your opponents can take. You're going to see this week, Seattle as a popular team. A lot of people took Seattle in week 1. So in your pool, you may have 3 people left with you, and they've all taken Seattle, and you haven't. In that case, of course, Seattle is going to be your best option. Some people have taken San Francisco as well. There may be people in your pool who can't take San Francisco or Seattle. So my advice to you guys is going to be different based on the type of pool that you're in. So if you're looking at a small pool where San Francisco is available to you, certainly if no one else can take San Francisco, which is unlikely unless you're down to maybe 1 or 2 other people, San Francisco looks like a very strong play. They have the highest probability to win, and you're also going to be able to get a lot of leverage. You can see in the EV column at the 1.18 that kind of reflects that, and that's a calculation done by Survivor Grid, but it's basically telling you here that for the probability that San Francisco has to win their game, and the low ownership, this is a team with a significant amount of leverage, and we'll get into my spreadsheet, and we'll see that even further. All right, we touched on Seattle a little bit here against the Giants. Giants have not looked all that great. Seattle has looked good, even though coming off a loss here on that Sunday night game. The offense has been clicking, and they have about a 70% chance to win the game this week. There's only a couple of teams here at that 70% or better, Seattle being one of them. You look at the future here for Seattle. Now, home against the Rams, they have it listed, and I looked at some of the look-ahead lines on the Sharp app. It's still the Rams are laying 1.5 in Seattle. If they played that game today, certainly Seattle would be at least a 3-point, maybe more favorite in that game. So I think they will be a favorite against the Rams in Week 9. It's going to depend on the health, of course, of the Rams as to where that line goes. but really not a lot of options. I mean, we don't like them at home for San Francisco, at Atlanta, home for Buffalo. Mentioned the Ram game, then a bye at San Francisco. Home for Arizona, maybe, but that's week 12, right? So there's not a whole lot of options. So you can see people who do have Seattle available to them, why they're going to jump on them this week. I think it makes it a little easier, obviously, in your decision-making if you did take Seattle in week 1, for instance, where most people who did take Seattle took them in week 1 who are still alive. I can see, if you did take them, of course, you kind of are in a good situation because you can easily fade the team that's getting the most attention this week. And I really think you have to give strong consideration to fading Seattle in all formats. This is going to be a very high-owned team with a probability of, like I said, about 70%. But with other options out there, we could get a lot of leverage. Almost all of these other teams are going to be in a good leverage spot against Seattle. So you have to give a lot of consideration to fading Seattle, even if you have them available to you, but even more so in pools with not as many people, small pools, mid-sized pools that we don't expect to go the distance. I think fading Seattle here looks like a really strong option. Kansas City is home for New Orleans. Listen, Kansas City has kind of not played all that great. They've just been getting by and winning. I mean, winning's the name of the game. Certainly in Survivor, that's the name of the game. But this is an option not a lot of people are going to go to. Not a lot of people are taking Kansas City. If you're in Circa, of course, Kansas City is going to be an option for the holiday games. I've mentioned here before how Circa runs its pool, where you have to use Thanksgiving week or the Thanksgiving Day games, and now a Black Friday game this year as its own week, and as well you have to do that on Christmas Day. So it really limits your options on those days to the teams playing, and Kansas City plays on both of those days. So in Circa, you're going to see not as many people taking Kansas City as maybe in a larger pool that you're playing at home that doesn't have those rules. But even with that, you could see all the future value that we have on Kansas City. Of course, at Vegas is potentially a play in Week 8. We mentioned Week 8 and just how many options there are. Home to Tampa. Listen, Tampa's a pretty good team, but you expect Kansas City to be a decent-sized favorite in that game. Home to Denver. Denver's been surprising and been very good. Now, offensively, not that great. I've got them in my power rankings that you can find on the Sharp app as the top defense right now in the league. So we'll see Week 10 if that Denver game is as enticing as it looks now. At Buffalo, you're not going to want to touch. At Carolina, of course, would be an option in Week 12. Home for Vegas is always going to be an option. So you're going to have a lot of options here with Kansas City in the future, and that's going to suppress the Kansas City ownership. With that said, I would not be afraid to take Kansas City here this week if I was in a pool where I thought let's say I couldn't take San Francisco in that pool, or Seattle, or even if I could take Seattle, let's say I just could not take San Francisco and I wanted to get away from Seattle in a pool where I felt like my two opponents were going to take Seattle. Let's say they both could take Seattle. I thought they would both take Seattle. I may get to a Kansas City here in that situation. But in larger pools, I think it's going to be difficult to take Kansas City because of the fact that you're going to have some better options on them later in the year and want to save that team. Chicago, another one of they're the top 4 as far as win percentage. They are getting some attention because they're playing Carolina. They are at home. I could see Chicago being a play certainly in larger pools for you, and you'll see that when we get to the spreadsheet. Green Bay's at the Rams as a favorite. Not a lot of people are going to be touching this game. Green Bay, though, when you look at it, not a ton of future value, although next week could be an option with Arizona coming into Green Bay. I think a lot of people will save Green Bay for that game. Let's just jump all the way down to Washington, which is an interesting choice here. Home against Cleveland, only a 61% chance to win their game, but getting about 13% of the picks so far this week. And again, update the Survivor grid as the week goes on, and look at the lines as they'll change as the week goes on. Before you make your pick, you want to get the most information you possibly can. Don't put your pick in until very last minute. Get a pick in now so you don't screw up and forget to put your pick in. But wait till the last minute, see how things kind of shake out. Update the Survivor grid and look at the lines, because that's going to help dictate where you're going to go with your picks. But Washington getting a lot of attention, and the reason being is the lack of future value. Now, if you think Washington is perhaps better than the market thinks right now, and they've certainly played that way. The quarterback has been phenomenal. Has been one of the best quarterbacks as far as efficiency goes so far this season. Daniels has one of the best quarterback ratings so far. Now, their defense is definitely lacking, so that's the weak spot of this team. But we look this week against Cleveland. People are going to take them. Cleveland's been one of the worst teams in the league. Offensively, been terrible. Watson, a huge disappointment. Now, you're not going to like Washington next week at Baltimore, but then they get Carolina in Week 7, and I think quite a few people are going to be on that game, which is going to keep some people off Washington this week. But I think in larger pools, let's just quickly look at Week 7. Do we have some other options here in Week 7? Now, Buffalo is a team that really most people have not taken, although you're going to have some people have taken them in pools. So you're going to have to be, it's going to be pool specific as to what we're looking at here. Jacksonville at a neutral site against New England. I don't get all great feelings about that game in London. But that certainly would be an option. You've got the Rams home against Vegas. We've got some options in Week 7 where if you wanted to go ahead and take Washington this week, maybe not that bad an option, certainly in larger pools. So let's jump into the spreadsheet and see what I'm talking about. So in the sheet right now, I've got it at 0%. And as you guys know, when I weight the future value here at 0%, it's just going to strictly spit out the team with the highest win probability. Now, my win probabilities here are going to be slightly different than the win probabilities you're seeing on Survivor Grid, partially because I use the Sharp app, and what I do is take a midpoint of the money lines, and that's what you're seeing in column E here. That's a midpoint of the money lines, and that takes the VIG. I don't want to get too far down into the weeds here, but that takes the VIG out. It's called a VIGless line, and I've got videos here on our YouTube channel about that. But we want a VIGless line because we don't want the VIG is what the house advantage is on a game. We want to try to figure out as close to possible what the win probability is, and when you take the VIG out of the equation, we get the VIGless line, which gives us a win probability that's going to be closer than really anything else, unless you've got a model that can beat the market and beat the point spreads. I would strictly look at the odds in the betting markets to give you a good idea of what the probability is of each team winning. And then this may be off just a little bit because, of course, I updated these numbers a few hours ago, and of course, by the time you're watching this, it may have changed as well. So, as we see, San Francisco clearly the biggest favorite this week. They're going to give us the highest number of picks here. Basically, I always put it at 100. It sort of gives me not just this. This was initially as, let's say, I've got 24 picks left in a pool. This will give me, how I should be allocating those based on my future value weight. I leave it at 100 because it almost gives you a percentage, right? So we're getting like a 60% favorability on San Francisco, 40% on Seattle. And if we were looking to put 3 teams in, it would be Kansas City and the next team right down the line. So what it's doing is this future value, which is the lower the number, the more future value a team has, the lower number here, it's not taking that into account at all. As I increase this up to 50%, we see the numbers change a little bit. You see Seattle really not a lot of future value. So now you get it tilts in the balance of Seattle. Now we're still looking at Seattle and San Francisco as the 2 favorite teams. But if we're looking towards the future more, the spreadsheet at least is letting us know that you may want to consider Seattle here because of the fact that we don't have a lot of opportunities to take Seattle in the future. Again, we've got it. This is just one tool at our disposal. I want to go back to 0% for a second. Let's talk about the threshold column. This is something that we're looking at a little earlier than I thought we would be, just because of these pools and the chaos that we've seen in these pools. But this threshold column really comes more into play when you have very few people left in your pool, and you want to see what's the number, or what's the win probability that I should be looking for in order to fade this team. And typically, you want to fade a team that's getting the most ownership. So you're going to, again, look to be pool specific here. But if you had 10 people left in your pool, and let's say 4 of them you felt, and 10 people left, including yourself, you felt 4 of the other participants were going to take Seattle. This is telling you, and this is based on 35%. This is actually going to go down. If I made this 40%, that drops down to under 60, right? But let's not mess up my formulas here. To fade this team, if 3 or 4 of your opponents are going to take Seattle and you're down to very few left, you're going to want any team above 61% chance to win. That basically encompasses everyone from Washington up, okay? And now if you have San Francisco at your disposal, why not just go ahead and take San Francisco in your pool? Now, again, pool specific. If everyone in your pool is taking Seattle, that's going to change this this calculation, right? If you know that only one person in your pool can take Seattle, well, now it becomes a little bit different. You know, let's say you think your pool is just going to be totally different than these other pools, and you're going to get like 40% of the pool. You know, 4 out of 10 people are going to take San Francisco, and 1 out of the 10 is going to take Seattle. Well, now that changes these numbers just a bit, right? So now we don't necessarily, at 10, we don't necessarily need to fade the Seattle nearly as much, right? Because only one person out of the 10 is going to take them. And I'll get back to this, but you see when it gets up to 3 or 4, as this number gets lower, what that's indicating to us is not just which teams would be viable, which is everyone from Washington up, but as this number becomes lower, it's also triggering to us that we've got a better opportunity here to fade that team. So really what it's saying is Seattle, the best fade, and I think they are a good fade in just about all formats, as I mentioned before, because of the fact that we're getting so many people on Seattle this week, that a game that they only have about a 70% chance to win could certainly lose a game like that, as we've seen just about anyone could lose on any given week. That's going to put you in a tremendous situation to win your pool. Certainly, if you could take a team like San Francisco that has a much better, 5% better chance to win their game at a very low or relatively low ownership. So keep that in mind, and that's kind of what we're looking at when we look at this spreadsheet. You've got to put all the pieces together to make that decision for you, and you'll see in my comments I give different advice to different people based on the pool that they're in and what the situation is, how many people are left. Let's jump to 100%. Just take a look at what that looks like. And this is something, again, if I had 400 people like Circa has left in their pool, I'm still looking at 100%. That pool's probably going to go all the way to the distance here. And what's interesting, we touched on them, Washington pops up, and there's a reason Washington's getting some ownership. And again, these numbers may be slightly off from where that sheet that I just showed you on Survivor Grid, but 14% of the ownership. You see that with the very little future value, you've got to give in a larger pool. You've really got to give Washington a look here because you're going to be able to hopefully win your game. Now, it's a much lower percentage, that chance that they win their game, but we've got to take some risks in a larger pool. We can't go 18 weeks taking the biggest favorite every week because it's just not going to happen. We're not going to be able to have the ability to pick San Francisco as the biggest favorite. As you've seen, 2 weeks in a row, they were the biggest favorite. If you took them last week, obviously you can't take them this week. So there's going to be times where we just can't take the largest favorite. We're not always going to be picking 76+% teams to win. Washington would be an option. So that's an option I would seriously consider, especially if I had multiple picks. I think I'd have to at least throw one, if I had 10 picks, maybe 2 or 3 on Washington, because of the fact that that's going to bolster if they win, that's going to increase the value of your entry. I talk about equity, getting the worst team. When you have the weaker the teams that you've picked already, increases your equity. So if you evenly split up the equity if there's $10,000 in the pot with 10 people left, right, you've got $100 worth of equity on each entry that you have left. Each one of those 10 entries has $100 in value. If I said 1,000, I don't know if I said 10,000 or 1,000. If it's 1,000 in the pot, you've got 10 entries left. You've got $100 worth of value, right? So you're just going to divide what the pot is by the number of entries left. Now, if I have an entry where I haven't taken any of the big teams, and I've taken teams like Washington, or I've gotten away with name another weak team. Maybe somehow I took Denver, or like I've suggested to you guys, if you have a double elimination pool, or a pool, not necessarily double elimination, but a buyback pool. Double elimination, a little bit different. You still want to get riskier with your picks, certainly when you still have your 2 eliminations available to you. But when you have a buyback pool, you almost want to take teams that are like teams like Carolina. I suggested it to a few people the week that they played Vegas. Someone was in a buyback pool. That was the last week that they were allowed to buy back. I said, just take Carolina. It gives you a free entry. If they actually win the game, fantastic. You don't have to buy back. If they lose, you buy back, and you lost out on taking Carolina, a team you're never going to take again. So if you're in a pool where you can still buy back and you haven't done this yet already, you need to look at a team, maybe not even a favorite, right? Maybe you want to take a team like New England, a team that you'll never take again. That's going to bolster. If they win, of course, you don't have to buy back, but it increases your equity regardless because of the fact that you're taking a weak team. Now, I'm bringing all this stuff up with equity because if you are going to go ahead and take San Francisco, you've got multiple entries left. You've got 2-3 entries left. If you're going to take a team like San Francisco, you want to put them and pair them with a team or with a line, entry line, that may have the weakest teams available to you to keep that one secure. Conversely, if I'm going to take a chance on a Washington and I've taken, San Francisco, Buffalo, and Kansas City already, well, then that's the one that I want to pair with Washington because I want to try to increase the value. That one is not as valuable as some of the other entries in the pool because I've taken some of the better teams already with that entry. So I can increase the equity by taking some weaker teams, and now the other entrants in the pool are going to be having to catch up, or I'm going to be catching up to them by taking a weak team. So keep that in mind. Who you pair with whom on your entries is important. If you have any questions about that, of course, ask me down below. But I think we've gone into this week fairly deeply. And any questions, of course, I'm always happy to answer them. Guys, give us a like, give us a subscribe. And please, if you get the chance, download the Sharp app. And if you're interested in the pro version of the Sharp app, Survivor35 is the code to get you 35% off. You're going to get in now at a price that's not going to be available in the future because we are adding so much in the next few weeks, including this week. We're going to have over 60 sports books at the fastest possible rate of refresh. So it's going to be live. And as a matter of fact, you can, on some books, right now we're going to have it available in the prop market, where you can look at props and be able to click on the prop and it'll open up the sports book. So if you have FanDuel and you click, if FanDuel has the best odds on that particular prop and you want to bet it at FanDuel, you can just click it inside of our app. It's going to open up your FanDuel app and you're going to be able to bet it really, really quickly. Another great feature among the many. But if you are looking for up-to-date, really quick lines at almost any sports book, I think we've got 60 sports books are going to be in the Sharp app here. You're going to want to get the app. So again, guys, appreciate all you guys are doing for me and all the help that you guys are giving us here at the Sharp app. We will be back next week with another version of Scratching and Surviving. I hope you guys make it, and I look forward to seeing you. Good luck.